Hello, and welcome to episode 66 of Gondor Calls for Ale, a Middle-earth strategy battle games podcast. I am, of course, your host, Sam Gallagher, and with me in another episode is my brother, Ben.
Hello, listeners, and hopefully viewers. Welcome back to the show.
Yes, welcome back to what we hope will be a rather exciting episode because, Ben, much like Frodo, we are jumping on Gandalf's firework wagon, which is, of course, the leaks, which you may have guessed from the title. But before we jump into that, we're going to stick to our tried and true drinking while talking. And, of course, Ben, I must ask you, what are you drinking this fine afternoon or evening?
Well, Sam, for this, it's not actually so fine up here in Maine. It looks nice and fine down where you are, but it's actually a rainy, miserable afternoon up here. But anyway, for this delightful afternoon, Sam, because we're going to have a delightful afternoon chatting, I have myself a Dunedain's Dark Ale. Not all those who ramble have a point, but we certainly do.
Sometimes. Very good.
All right. What about you, Sam? What are you drinking this lovely sunny Florida afternoon?
Yeah. Well, this is an AI background, Ben. It's
It's all AI. Got it.
I am drinking an Aenor Ale, Ben, which is of course the last drink of Gondor.
Nice. And that's why they've been calling for ale, Sam. Gondor is shit out of ale. They've been out of ale since the last drink of Gondor.
Yeah, we got to
Rode off to go fight. Dropped his beer at the Battle of Fornost.
Yeah. Though I don't think the Battle of Fornost is his last battle, is it?
No.
Because then he
What I know.
I don't know. I think, or I thought he rode out to try and take Minas Morgul, and that's the. But okay. I could be wrong. I could have skim read a thing about that and be like, well, that's how it works in my head now. As Tolkien very clearly detailed all of this stuff.
Oh, absolutely. Games Workshop have him in a cellar.
That's true.
That's where the new edition
resurrected him, even in death. Even in death. It's
even in death. I still serve it. Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah. Even in death, I still serve. Even in death, I still write. It's just a dreadnought. All right, Ben. So we've sort of talked about a little bit what we're going to talk about, but do you want to give us a more succinct, clear version of to the listeners, to the viewers, what we're talking about?
All right. So Sam and I are not going to touch on each and every single one of the leaks. There will be some spoilers in this episode if you have avoided the leaks and rumors of things to come so far, and you just want to be super surprised and excited when you get your box and open it up. Then skip ahead to the latter half, the potatoes of this episode.
Yes.
For the leaks, Sam and I are going to touch on a couple of our things that we're just most excited about or most curious about from what we've seen. Because, of course, like any spoiler, this particular spoiler has just got me more excited for the actual thing. So we're going to hopefully be bringing some of that excitement and energy to you with just a couple of things that we thought were the most interesting because we couldn't help but spoil for ourselves.
Yeah, that is a whole thing in and of itself. It's really difficult to not have stuff spoiled for you. If you're really no, I want to just open the book like it's the early 2000s where none of these things were leaked or spoiled in the same way, and read it for the first time. Then I do think it's kind of hard. Obviously, if you're not weak-willed like I am, you can just click past those posts. But as soon as I see one, I'm like, oh, because I really want to know.
I think you want the ring bearer, Sam.
Right. It might be easier for me to ignore those posts if if it was I know this, it's going to be this date. If I've been okay, I just have to hold on and wait. But because there's been that we're sort of waiting for it, don't know when it's going to be. There's sort of been a lot more building anticipation for me, and it sort of gets me any little nugget. I'm just leap on.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Exactly.
So talk about a couple of the things, a couple of the leaks that we're excited about, and then a couple of the ones that we've seen part of it, but then it's wait, how is I'm just intrigued. Tell me more. I would like
hints of other rules, but no other rules explained to me.
All right. Well, first off, Ben, I think my first question for you would be how, having read through and seen these leaks, and obviously we've talked about them somewhat, how are you feeling about the new edition? So
all the more excited. The more excited. There are some things that I've gone oh, that's interesting. I'm not sure how I feel about that, but I'm still, as a general rule, excited by what I'm seeing. I think the changes are positive changes.
What is what is it? Do you have a for instance?
I do have a for instance. We just dive right into the full on
Yeah.
leaks. So here we go. There's full on right here we go. The leaking heroic strike. Heroic strike is now a plus D3, or is it
Sure.
plus? It's
Yeah,
plus D3 to your fight value
Yeah.
instead of plus D6.
Uh-huh.
Which means the game is hopefully moving away from this like big hero, heroic strike off. Like your hero, you have a fight 5 hero, you've got a good odds of getting 1 in 3 chance of getting to that 10, and then you're the Superman of the battlefield for 1 turn, and you can just turn around and smash anything. And I'm hoping that they're sort of moving it away from this sort of just dice roll off, because now there's hopefully going to be more heroes with higher fight, more heroes with lower fight, and a wider spread of fights, so that hopefully, my hope is heroic strike is the game is going to be less about heroic strike, because it feels like heroic strike is something that you sort of need to have in your army so that you can deal with this big hero. But if heroic strike is now only plus D3, maybe it won't be as like, I don't know. Sometimes it feels like the game is all about that one roll between 2 players.
Yeah, I mean,
my concern is that it still will be, and if you want to play a fight 5 captain army, then you're just screwed,
but you were screwed anyway playing that.
That's true. Not captains, but like some of the small Erebor hero armies, or
right. I guess I'm saying I guess I'm like you were still screwed doing that anyway. Like that was an objective.
That's true.
Like,
That's true. You've always been screwed doing it.
I think it's sort of interesting because like going up D3 versus going up D6 is you're more consistent of going up. Like you're like rolling a being like, okay, well, if I can get to a 2, which is not the highest, I don't know. It feels like it's a 1 going up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 is very different from going up 1, 2, or 3. You know?
Yeah. Yes.
I do think it's interesting because if all the fights are bumping up, then it doesn't matter as much. Like let's for instance, right? Let's take Glorfindel fight 7 needs a 3+ to go to a 10 now. If he's going to a fight 8, if he like moves up by 1, it's the same thing. He needs a 3+ to go to fight 10. Versus
but a lot of the fight 5 heroes who
Sure.
could get to 10, and if you had 2 fight 5 heroes, you felt pretty good about getting to 10. Now they're maybe going to fight 6.
Right.
They're not going all the way to fight 7. That would be shocking if a lot of those heroes go to fight 7.
Right. No, I mean
now that they like can't even make 10, which I think is going to be interesting.
Yeah. No, I mean it will be interesting.
So that was sort of one that I had a bit of like, oh, that's
Yeah, I mean,
I am excited for it because it's a change, and my hope is that we're just moving away from some of those.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, Strike felt like it was a roll off. Whoever rolled higher often came out on top. If you both got to 10, which happened quite often, it was then did you both roll? It just became like it was the potential of three roll, like it just comes down to a 50-50 shot basically.
Right, exactly. And I'm hoping that we're going to move away from it's just like, well, you've got a big hero and you outfight me, so I need to find another way of dealing with that rather than just we're all relying on getting to fight 10 and smashing each other.
I mean, the other thing that it's not going to happen, but would be really cool if all of the like higher fight heroes like the Elf Lords and Azog, Bolg, like if all of those heroes didn't have Strike and they basically rather than March, captains all got Strike and like nobody else really had it, and then all of your that
would be hilarious.
Right, that'd be awesome. But so anyway, I fair enough. I think that's a positive change because I would sort of am fine with like getting rid of it.
I am too, but my first reaction was like, whoa, that's a big, I was kind of like, that caught me off guard, gave a little bit of hesitation. I wasn't quite sure about it.
I guess I sort of assumed Strike was going to be changing, so.
Yeah.
All right. So that was your for instance of something you had questions about. I guess I'll talk about my for instance of something that I was like, this will be interesting to see how this plays out, which is I like what they've I like what they've done with courage. Just make it a stat that you roll higher than, like, which is funny because it's the reverse of what it was, right? Where having really high courage used to be good versus low courage was bad. Now it's like the lower your courage number, and same with intelligence actually, because it works the same way, is better. So like an intelligence 2 wizard is like way better than an intelligence 8 orc, let's say, kind of thing. Because I guess nothing's going to be a 2 because then you just couldn't fail. So 3 or 4 would be my bet on the low ones. But it will be interesting to see with how courage works, how Blades of the Dead work.
Yes.
Because again, like, without doing something weird where you take their courage, subtract it from 10, and that's their defense. Like, it could just be that, but that's a kind of like that like adds a lot of wording to a previously very simple rule, which was like defense, that courage counts.
What if it's like what if it's half their courage number rounding up and that's their defense, or just you strike against? No.
Yeah, if it's going to be similar or the same, it's going to be.
Doesn't work.
It should just be subtracted from 10 and.
Yeah. That
like,
would be interesting to see how Blades of the Dead work, though.
Yeah. So that's one that it like doesn't overly matter because not many things have the rules, but it'll be. I am intrigued. Color me intrigued. That'll be one of the rules that I flip to first when I finally get my hands on the book.
I'm going to be torn between the obsessive part of me that wants to read it meticulously from cover to cover, and the curious part of me that just has got all these questions.
Oh, you got to. I mean, just to be able to play the game, you got to be able to flip through it, look at the ones you're like, this is going to be relevant right away, and then have I want to read it all the way through. You know.
Yeah, and catch all those little ones that you're like, oh, that's a small change that I didn't catch first read through.
All right, Ben. So we sort of talked about some ones that have. To me that doesn't count as our questions.
Oh shit!
About oh well, fine. That can count as yours. I have other questions. What is your first of your 2 rule changes that you've seen that you're most excited about?
Heroic challenge.
Yes.
Heroic challenge. Now I've done 2 heroic action changes, but like seriously, heroic challenge needed a reason to be cool, and now it has a reason to be cool.
For sure.
And yeah, I think it's awesome. You get this bonus to go like hunt down your target. You don't actually, I can't remember if you actually have to go hunt them down or not. It's been a minute since you do. Yeah, so you actually have to go hunt them down, which is cool. If you accept, you also have to go hunt each other down, but you don't have to already be in base-to-base contact, which I think is, a good thing. Isn't it a target within 6 inches? Pick a hero within 6 inches and declare a heroic challenge.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure it's got
probably.
Which is cool because you're like, you see your opponent from across the field, you draw your sword and you go like, come get me, right? It's so much, it feels a lot more cinematic than already being in the fight. And because
Would you say, Ben, that you look at them and you say, if you want him, come and claim him?
Exactly. Yes, that's exactly what I would say. Or if you're playing the Witch King, you go like, no man can slay me. Like, what you got? Come get me.
Yeah.
Will you come between the Nazgul and his prey? I think not.
Yeah.
It's so good. It's so good. And it means you can, like, because the issue with heroic challenge, right, was like, we're in fight. I'm going to call a challenge. And you go, I'm going to call a strike. I got you. And now we're not fighting. You got to watch out for it. You don't want to challenge an elf lord when he can heroic combat into you. That would be bad. But you could call a heroic challenge, and then next turn you've got the opportunity to do that strike off still, which I think is cool.
And I also like that if they refuse, you still get the bonus.
Yes.
So you can challenge Galadriel, and she can be like, no, but if you do end up getting in combat with her, you still get the +1 attack and reroll.
+1 to wound.
+1 to wound.
+1 attack, +1 to wound is brutal.
Pretty good. That was an exciting one for sure.
Yeah, so good. All right, Sam. So that was mine. That got me really excited. I've been wanting a change for challenge for a little while. What about you? What did you see and go just like yes?
It's hard. I should have reread them.
I should have too, but I haven't read them since they first came out. So
I think some of the additional spells seem really cool. Two,
I didn't read the magic one too thoroughly, so do tell.
yeah, I can't. I'm gonna mess it up because I can't quite remember. There's one that's like summon roots, which like you put down a marker and it makes difficult terrain. Which I'm like, Ent's gonna be able to be like summon up roots, so that's pretty cool.
Ooh, that's cool.
And then there's another one that is like end magic or like dispel magic, where you pick a model. If the spell goes off, you get to end an effect that's on them, which is really cool.
Actually,
Obviously,
really like that one because it feels very Tolkien to me. Because when Gandalf first meets the Balrog, he talks about this counter spell that hits him.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
the counter spell was terrible, and there was never really any of. You didn't feel
Yeah.
a lot of like there was that interaction in the game. So I quite like this.
Yeah, I mean, and there are some other changes in the spells which I think is pretty cool, like Black Dart going from strength 9 to strength 6. Big change. Just
Big
as
change.
far as like I wouldn't. It's probably still pretty terrible to play against the 9, but it feels less like, oh look, my leader is now dead. Oh look, they're not just guaranteed kills essentially. And then the other one, which makes me a little bit sad, is no more blasting around with Sorcerer's Blast, but that's also a totally fine change.
Yeah.
Because
it was
people
fun.
ruled it incorrectly anyway, so at least this way there's no questions about it. But the one, so I'm excited for the changes to some of the magic stuff. Paralyzed should have been changed, but doesn't appear to have been Lasad's. So I'm excited about those two new spells specifically, and I will be curious to see what has them, and because that's the thing, is there are some really cool ones and there have been, right, like there are some really cool unique spells like Curse, for an example, that one model in the game has, so
Right.
it would be kind of cool to have it would be interesting to see like Dispel or End Magic. I'm like, that's really cool. But if it's like only Gandalf the White has it, and you're like, oh, I mean, that's cool, make Gandalf the White better, definitely, but like I was excited to have
That like summon roots make difficult terrain is really neat though, because it gives you this opportunity to make a cool, like, you don't want to make it too difficult. You still need to be able to place models on it, but you make a little rough terrain.
Yeah.
It's a modeling opportunity. It's a hobby opportunity, which is really exciting.
Or even just a little, like, because I think it says it's a 25 mil marker that you like, it's within a range of, I think.
Okay.
So you could make the marker and be like, this is my little roots marker. Have a little baby Groot kind of thing across the screen.
Yeah.
An Enting, perhaps.
An ending.
Yeah, so that was the reading through the magic was pretty cool, seeing all those changes. All right, Bang, do you have a second one for us?
I do have a second one, which is how the priority is rumored to work. We haven't had a preview of the actual priority pages, but in one of the special rules, there's the implication that the roll-off for priority, if you win that roll-off, you now can choose to yield priority to your opponent and to go second, which I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's exciting. It does make me wonder too. I doubt it will change. We also haven't seen the rules for heroic move. I do wonder if there's going to be some element of heroic hold, wait, steady, don't go yet, which would be very, very interesting, because a big part of this game is trying to move first or second, and I think that's. I don't actually think it's going to change a lot. It just rewards you for rolling high, versus sometimes you don't want to roll, you want to roll low, and now it's just like, nope, you always want to roll high, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah. No, I do think that's cool. I like that special rule, which is tied to General Targ, that if he gives away if you win priority, or if you win the roll and choose to give it to your opponent, that he then has a bonus to give out to his troops. I think that's a pretty neat way to do it.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
I would love to see trying to think of like a berserking kind of hero, but like a headstrong hero. Who, if you win priority, if you don't give it away, you get like a bonus of, because you're like recklessly charging in.
Reckless charge, yeah.
No, that's definitely going to be an interesting one.
Or even something crazy like a hero who cannot give it away.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be interesting? Like, you must go first, and then you may not ever care. You just build your army with like, I'm coming for you.
Yeah, the question about that is like, is it? Yeah, because just priority is like kind of independent from your like troops most of the time. It's But yeah, no, it would be
There are some
interesting.
armies that are like, Theodred's Guard or,
Sure, yeah,
Lurtz's Scouts, where it's like about that hero.
yeah. Theodor's Guards where you either couldn't give it away, or if you didn't give it away, you got a he got a
Right. If you
bonus
do
kind of
give away priority, Theodred drowns in the water and dies like more easily or something, right?
yeah.
Um,
All right, yeah. No, I do think the priority
yeah.
is pretty.
And
Cool.
again, that's one that that made me want it even more.
Yeah.
Which actually, Sam, before I ask you about your next one that you're excited about, or one you have a question about, just before I ping pong it back to you, I have another question for you. Do you think these leaks were deliberate from Games Workshop to get people more hyped about it? No? You think they were like they just handed them out to some people early and someone was like, "Aha, I got you good."
It's either that they sent preview copies and somebody leaked them, or they because sometimes those leaks come from like the manufacturers, because all the books are produced in China. So sometimes you get a picture from the like factory floor. Like there was one of the old world boxes before they released what the Tomb Kings and stuff were, and it was just a stack of unbuilt boxes. So it was just a flat stack of cardboard boxes, like sitting on a warehouse floor that somebody had been like click. So I don't think Games Workshop ever intentionally leaks stuff.
Well, it got me more. I mean, I was already excited, but it got me more excited, and clearly the community is excited because the Discord and Facebook pages have all just been going over the top with them for a little while. Not to mention all the other content creators.
I do think that as continuing on this tangent, that Games Workshop should, and Games Workshop, if you're listening, you should hire me to do this. They should hire a counterintelligence of somebody who just like leaks stuff that is just wrong. Like here's the like a leaked book, and it's just like entirely wrong.
No, they should not give you that job. You would just use it to piss people off.
It would be amazing.
Be like your favorite thing, ruin,
right?
And then everyone would be like, no, and then you'd be like, ha, I got you. No, they should absolutely not. Don't do it, Games Workshop. You'll be employing the worm tongue. He's Grima Worm Tongue. He's going to be whispering poison in their ears.
So good. I'll send my buddy James Workshop a message. It'd be so amazing. Like even if it was just subtle, like how funny would that be?
It would be great. You'd have to. I mean, if they did, they'd be mostly employing you for 40K, but you could definitely throw some.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, it would be or Age of Sigma. It would be great. It would be great either way. And I fucking think they should 100% should do that. That'd be hilarious.
All right, Sam, hit me. What else? What other leaks caught your eye?
Well,
tickled your fancy that you thought was particularly of note?
I think the most exciting leak was the least talked about leak, which was the instructions for building.
Oh my god! Oh my god! Yes,
it's like legitimately pretty multi-part.
Oh, I'm so glad you brought this up because I was going to, and then when I was thinking about recording this episode yesterday, I was going to bring this up, and then today completely skipped my mind, and I'm so glad you brought that up because, like, yes,
it's
how
so
cool
good.
Were the pictures of the assembly instructions that we normally never read. So those kits are going to be so good. So many options.
It's so amazing. The one drawback I will give you is that it will be a lot harder to be. I'm going to build an army the night before the tournament if it doesn't have a painting requirement, because Lord of the Rings is the easiest one to do. You're like clip, base, clip, base. But now you're actually going to have to assemble them. But it's unbelievable.
That's a problem I'm so excited to have.
Right, and now I'm like, now it doesn't matter if they don't bring out plastic riders, which obviously I still think they will, especially how multi-part they are, because you're just like, well, the dudes are multi-part, like that's so much easy. It's gonna be great. It's awesome.
Oh yeah, so good, so excited about that. Yeah. I just heard that our new local shop, which is hilariously in an old shed.
Nice.
It's so Maine, Sam. It's so Maine. I pulled up the Treasure Trove Keep, and I was like, "Am I in the right place? This is a shed inside. I mean, it's a big shed, and it's they've put like insulation on the inside, and then carved it to look like stone walls and painted it gray. It's totally you walk inside, and you're like 40K, Age of Sigmar, like Magic the Gathering, like you're in a wargaming store. But it's like in the middle of the woods in this like brown painted shed in the woods of Maine. It's amazing. It's great. It's great. Every time I find it's a total treasure. Every time I find these little gems, I'm like, it's amazing. Anyway, they've ordered a bunch of copies of the starter set. So gonna go somewhere and get mine, and maybe we're gonna do some sort of gathering day. Maybe we'll do something crazy.
I saw Henry posted something about that, and I was like, like, oh, it's on the release day, and I'm not driving to Maine for that.
Yeah, well, yeah, and we're gonna try and I'm hoping we're gonna try and get together and go see the movie the day before, and then
nice,
and then go get our toys, and maybe I'll talk everyone into doing some mad iron painter or something. See how late we can stay up.
Iron painter.
Maybe the store owner will be open for it. But and hopefully he's ordered a bunch of other stuff too, so I can go spend all my money.
Yeah, I mean I am curious, and as this is being recorded on the 23rd, I suspect tomorrow we will find out whether it will just be the box or whether it will be the box.
Plus. It's too bad you're flying tomorrow, because otherwise we totally could do this tomorrow and be even more excited.
Right. Well, we can always do a small little something. Yeah, I really hope that Freka is released on that same weekend, because I want to paint him for Golden Demon, and we are rapidly running out of time for that. So one of my fat fist shaking king of the Dunlandings.
Such a great model.
All right, Ben, let's sort of start wrapping this up so we can get into some potatoes. But before we do get into them potatoes, do you have any other? Is there anything else that you're like?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh no, one more that I was excited about. Pleasantly surprised. Do we say pleasantly surprised? Flaming Brands. We talked about this in the last episode or the episode before the last episode, and we were like, don't make flaming brands a thing in the game. You're going to set people on fire or burn to rain. He's like, don't do that. And Games Workshop didn't do that. They made them count for 2 guys near an objective, which is just such. I really hope that more armies have access to flaming brands.
Yeah.
Because it's really cool.
Yeah, and I think that sort of ties in nicely into asking some questions, which is like, are more armies going to have access to flaming brands, or are Dunlandings going to be like the most best objective holding army of all time?
Yeah, because if they're like 5-6 point Dunlanding warriors with 2 point flaming brands and 1 point shields, you're going to be like, let me throw 10 of these into my army and good luck getting any objectives off of me.
Yeah, I can leave 2 of them on my backfield objective, and that counts as 4. Now you have to get 5 models through for
one victory point. Yeah. Now the flip side of that is they're going to be like Dunlanding warriors who are going to be fight 3 and just get defense 5 and just get run over by stuff. But if you can keep them alive, they're going to. So I hope orcs. I could see orcs having flaming brands.
Yeah.
I want someone to do a flaming brand tournament. We've talked about this twice off air now, so now I'm going to talk about it on the podcast. I want someone to do a flaming brand tournament where give my hobbits flaming brands, give everybody flaming brands, light the beacons.
1,000 brands in the wind or something. That's what I mean. I think I'm gonna just jump in and say my sort of try and finish this up so we can move on, because I think that sort of borderline is what you started to talk about. I also in those leaks noticed the Dunlanding warriors have light shields, so I'm curious to see if there are different types of shields and like what they do. Like a light shield you can shield with, or you get +1 defense, but you don't get the shield with. Can you shield with them, but you don't get the +1 defense? Heavy shields now, or is it like heavy shield is a thing and it gives you shield wall if you're in contact with a couple models with so just be interesting to see.
Yeah, definitely. It's so exciting. So many more questions. Can't wait to stay up all night reading through that rulebook.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move into some potatoes, Ben. But before we do, we're going to talk about a very serious topic in all wargaming, which is, of course, the potato dice, and how rolling a potato die is, I think it's another word for it being cocked. I don't know. It was a good way to segment into, of course, talking about our sponsor, the Baron of Dice, Ben, where if you want to buy yourself some beautifully hand-swirled resin dice with no micro bubbles that are personally guaranteed by Gondor Calls for Ale to roll 6s at least some of the time, you need look no further, because the Baron of Dice has got you covered in dice. And if you want to get a discount, you can use the code, which is in the link or in the description of wherever you're listening or watching this episode. And if you want a link to get any of those awesome dice, it is in the same place. So definitely check that out. Helps the Baron out, helps us out. And now we're going to roll in to our next segment.
Yeah, on to the potatoes of the episode, Sam. You wanna lead us into this segment?
Sure. Yeah. So I think what we want to talk about, and I've sort of been alluding to it, or we've been alluding to it on the last few episodes, and it's something that I have definitely been talking to Ben about and some of my other friends about just in general, is sort of like competitive versus narrative versus like fun gaming kind of stuff. And I think we want to talk a little bit, and just certainly specifically with Lord of the Rings here, but also like what changes we've seen in the scene, because we essentially played the entirety of this edition. We didn't play the first. I think we actually did play the first Nova that these were the legal rules. I think we didn't released at a Nova, and they were using the previous rules, I assume. But yeah, so just sort of like talking about that stuff, because certainly towards the end of this edition, there have been like, at least in our areas where we play, and maybe it's most of the US, and I don't know about the rest of the world, obviously. Well, I do know about it. I have heard of it, but specifically to do with Lord of the Rings, there was like so much like garbage soup armies that were just, this doesn't really make sense. Why are these characters together? And the reason was because you picked the most powerful characters you could and stuck them into an army.
Yeah, I mean, and we started our journey and had great fun with this idea of like tweaking the list to get the right number of shields and spears, bows, crossbows, pikes, like whatever it was. We had a lot of fun sort of like tweaking our armies, sprinkling a couple of cavalry guys in there, experimenting sort of to see what worked. And that was and that was in the frame of competitive play. It was like, this is the army that I want to take. I want to min-max it, and I want to take it, competitively, and I want to play. And I feel like as a community, we've sort of kept taking that concept and kept like tweaking and refining and min-maxing. And like, at some point, like people just started taking this really weird, like we took theme, we forgot about theme, we didn't care about that at all. And, we definitely we've hated on soup lists in other episodes. I don't want to like bang on about it too much. I think what I would rather do is find a way to encourage us as players, both Sam's encouraged already, encourage other players to try other things that are, I don't know, more in the spirit of Tolkien's lore, and there will definitely be people out there who are listening to me going like, yeah, Ben, Games Workshop just threw out our alliance chart, and there were all of these things that, we could do that we can't do now.
And I think that's a response to the fact that, like, yeah, it's a real shame on one hand, it's a real shame that we lose the alliance chart, because there are some, like, who knows if there'll be a Thorin's Company, an Army of Lake Town list that you can build that, like, Thorin's arrived at Lake Town and the Master's like, yes, I'll send you off. Like, if you lose something like that, that's a bummer. Like, that's a cool list. And like, they fix the Master, so it isn't necessarily like overpowered or whatever. But my response is like, yeah, but we don't get to have nice things. We don't get to do that because enough people have been like, I'm taking this character and this thing, and then I'm just gonna like throw in all of these Galadriel Court Guard to have fight 6 wherever I need it. And it's just
I think another component of the problem, the scene, is that we play this game largely. I think this is true for the way that you and I play it, the way that people in our areas play it, and I think it's also true for like the GBHL over in the UK. I can't really speak for other places, but and it's like we play the game by going to tournaments. We're going to spend 2 days to play 5 games in a tournament, with the idea being that we're going to then get prizes and rewards for winning if we win. So like we've taken this idea of min-maxing somewhat themey lists, like your Rising Guard list. We spent quite a lot of time, and we had a great time picking how many pikes, how many like we really enjoyed that. That was super fun, right? And then like it just sort of it's somewhat inevitable in the frame in which the game is played So maybe you and I we've talked about it, but maybe we really need to start running a couple of events where like it's not a tournament, it's an event.
Right.
It's game day. Game day feels like it's slightly too informal. Like you want to make it a little more formal than a game day, but like it's an event. There is going to be a theme, and we're really going to be rewarding. You don't want to make it just about hobbying, because there are plenty of people that enjoy this game who
Sure.
aren't particularly skilled artists, and that is okay. We don't want to penalize you for not being a skilled artist. That's shitty. We want to find a way to reward people for playing things that are like more fun, more on theme, less of the like I will win at all costs kind of army.
Yeah,
thing.
I mean,
it feels like that's where we've gone, and it's not fun anymore.
every event in my mind should be number one. It should either be a combination of tournament points and soft scores, as people call them, so painting and sportsmanship, or just like number one best prize and first pick off any, like you get some free shit table is best sportsman. Because anyone can do that. That is an achievable goal for anyone. It doesn't matter if you have shittily painted models or amazing painted models. It's about you had consistent fun with you and this other person that you've like signed up to spend hours out, like a couple hours playing a game with. I mean, that's the thing that I think is stupidest about it all, is that like we have definitely, it feels like what has been lost sight of is that we are grown-ass adults for the most part. Obviously there are some kids, but like for the most part grown-ass adults playing with little plastic toys, and none of this matters. And like if you can go and you can crush a tournament and win every single game and win every single time, but every single person you play is like, man, that was really fun. I had a great time doing that. That's great. But I think that is less the case than you would hope it would be. And I think I had a thought that has now escaped my mind, which is a little awkward. But yeah, it's just like when I feel like when we started playing in the hobby, like we went to that Nova and it didn't matter. And even the second, like the doubles, like everyone was super cool. It was really fun. And even at the next grand tournament where we played a bunch of tournaments, or the first one showing up, it felt like a really easy, like warm, welcoming space, even though like that not Nova tournament or whatever, I won like 2 games, but I had a great time and everyone was really nice. And now this is the point, there we go. I knew if I just kept rambling, it would come back, that I wanted to get to, which is like the first like few years we were really consistently playing, which obviously there was like a couple years with COVID in there where we weren't really playing, and then, picked it back up. There was one person I could think of that I would be like, I don't want to play that person again. Now I go to an event, and a big event like Nova, and I look around the room and I'm just like, every round I'm like, God, I hope I can dodge playing this thing or against that person, or there's just it's less fun because I want to play these people because I know what they're going to be playing, or I know what they're like to play against. I just want to play strangers now because I don't have any. I'm like, this should be a fine game,
Or I hope I run into, there's like a handful of people that I do want to see, and I'm like, I want to play him because he's always a good time.
Yeah,
but you're right, and it's consistently, the top tables, and it's funny. I think an Unexpected Podcast did an episode about this a little while ago about meta stagnation, was I think the title of the episode. But a lot of what came out of that discussion was that the type of lists that you see at the top tables are no fun to play against. And so you're left with either playing something that you're going to lose and have that you're not guaranteed to win with. I'm sorry, it's like less S tier. If you're playing an S tier thing, it's no fun. And everyone's playing S tier things because they're playing to win. And there seems to be no way to do both. And I don't know that that's necessarily a problem per se. I think the problem is the people that like, the only way I have fun is when I win, so I have to play something ridiculous. Yeah. And the rest of us are going like, but I want to play with cool stuff. And this just like drive to reward winning at all costs, I think, is the thing that
Yeah, it's
And the framing it in tournaments, I think, is part of what I want to move away from as a community. I've got no idea how we do that.
I think framing it as a tournament's fine, and you just lay out in your pack like I'm gonna do best sportsman. I'm gonna do like I mean, because some places I think the US is like relatively unusual in the fact that pretty much every tournament you go to there is a monetary prize, whether it's product or gift cards or something. Like I was listening to those, I think it was Entmoot, and there was one where he was talking about like there's a tournament where there's like money on the line, and it was just store credit kind of thing. And I was like, that's like every tournament you go to a store here.
Yeah, everyone's like, a lot of the tournaments are like paid $15 to enter, and some amount of that gets put into door prize.
And so I would, if you're gonna, sure, we'll run a tournament, that's fine. But the first prize is gonna be best sportsman. Second prize is gonna be best painting. Maybe the third one's gonna be wooden spoon, and then sure, we'll do first, second, and third. Like you can have the like random blister of
The weird 3D prints,
right? And it's just like cool, like good job, you won, like congratulations, that is an impressive feat, but
because it's also important to reward skill at the game. I mean, it is a game, and it's something that we play to, you are playing to win, and it's good to reward that. But I think, I mean, I've said it too many times now. I don't want to say it again, but like we're just moving away from the trying to win at all costs.
Yeah, and so that's certainly something that will be interesting to see what that's like with how the new army construction comes, and I imagine there are going to be a handful of these lists that are just like stupidly overpowered compared to some of the other ones, and those are the ones you're going to see all the time. But I just think that as a community we need to lean more into the like, this is fun, especially if you want it to grow. I mean, because like I think if we had started the game now, I would probably have been like, Lord of the Rings is really cool, but I'm not going to go back to a bunch of these events. Whereas we started at a time where the events were so freaking fun and all of the people were awesome that it was like now I sort of look back and I'm like, that's a shame that I no longer feel this way.
And even the things that were less awesome, I feel like as just a game, people had worked it out less. There was less of this like, this is the best thing. If you play this, you're going to win 4 out of your 5 games. Like unless you play like a moron.
Sure.
There was less of those lists running around, so there was just less of that energy.
Yeah. All right, Ben. Well, we've successfully complained. You probably more reasonably than me. I think it is worth sort of moving into, which you touched on, how you can, like, how I guess we won't. Please participate, dear listener or viewer, if this rings an accord with you, and we can be the change we want to see. But we will be the change we want to see, Ben. And moving forwards, both with Gondor Calls for Ale and playing games. Do you have any, or potentially running events? Do you have any thoughts or feelings about how you or we can embrace this and sort of start making those changes?
So you sent me a old White Dwarf article clipping, and then later a little 30-second TikTok video, whatever, I don't know, snippet from a video podcast, which was about like the idea of telling a story with your war game, which is weird in the way that we play Lord of the Rings, which is we build an army and then we smash it up against another army, Middle-earth strategy battle game. And then we smash it up against another army, and that 9 times out of 10 or more, 99 times out of 100, it's not a thematic match. I get excited when I get a thematic match. Organizers try and set them up on the first round, but often it's like, warriors of Gondor fighting Rohan, or like, Mirkwood elves and
we get the
point. So it like that idea of telling a story is a bit odd, but I do kind of like the idea of building my army, and this is something I used to do a little bit more of when I was doing the whole like Army of Bolg thing, with this idea of like, I've got this army, and then maybe they're thrown in some sort of weird time warp. I don't know, but anyway, they're on a journey, they're going somewhere, and like, my hero is going to go on a journey. He's going to ride through these series of battles. He's going to encounter a bunch of different people, and he's got his sidekicks along the way. And I think sort of building your army with an idea of a theme is something that I want to get more into even though you're not necessarily going to get a like Tolkien thematic matchup
Sure.
when you go to an event.
Yeah, I'll read the quote because I pulled it up. This is from Jim Butler's advice, Ben, in White Dwarf. And there's some irrelevant stuff which I won't read. But point number 3 was a Warhammer battle isn't a game of chess, it's a story. As long as the story is exciting, it doesn't really matter who wins. If you only enjoy playing when you win, you are never going to get the most out of the hobby. And I think that is very accurate. And sage advice.
Yeah, and so part of that is like also acknowledging that just because you're on theme doesn't mean that it's going to be fun to play against. Like the Black Riders is 100% one of the most thematic armies you can take to a tournament because the 9 leave Minas Morgul and they ride forth into Middle Earth to go find the ring. They could run into anything on that journey, right? Like it feels really thematic. It's miserable to play against the 9. Like, don't do that, you know? Zuladan and the Witch King is kind of another good example. It's something that we saw a lot of in the past edition. I don't know that it was necessarily not fun to play against, but it wasn't great. We saw it a lot on top tables, and it's also very thematic because it's the Battle of Pelennor Fields. It just also happened to be very good. So theme is important, but also...
But that is just the building the story part of theme, right? Like I had an absolute blast. The most fun I've had at any event ever playing Lord of the Rings probably was when I played Hobbits and Ents. And it was a hilarious, stupid theme that I made up. Definitely not really a Tolkien theme, but like, whatever, kind of works. I had a great time playing it. And then I did a semi-okay job of like every game I would be like, well, this is the hunt for the Entwives. So, you know, whatever wooden thing on the board, I'm just going to constantly talk about how that might be an Entwife, or like I fought in a Rohan village and it was like, you better not have turned the Entwives into these houses. You know, if I find whatever her name is, like...
Imbrethel?
Yeah, something like, if I find her like cut up birthmark over there, like I'm gonna be real mad, you know, and like I'm gonna put an objective marker in this thing of trees because obviously that could be a clue for the Entwives, you know, and I think that's partially what this advice is about, right? Where you're like play in a way that like pushes a narrative and isn't just, you know, like. Oh, I mean, like I do it too, and everyone does. And I get you're at a tournament, you're trying to win, but you know, it's like Helm Hammerhand running away from the Fellowship show, or the breaking of the Fellowship, so I could throw throwing spears at them consistently. Like, not the most theme or fun thing. Obviously, Helm would be charging in and punching hobbits' heads off, but, you know, and that's the thing, is I'm not saying that you have to throw games or you have to only take bad options. I think it's just build a theme, be the guy who's like Aragorn draws his sword, you know, and just like engage in that way, and don't just like, I'm just gonna move this guy here and you're paralyzed and this has been fun for me. Thanks.
It's actually something I thoroughly enjoy talking about what this guy is going to do.
Right.
When I move my Warrior of Rohan, you know, I was playing a game against, and you know, some people are more withdrawn, and you don't.
Sure.
And that's fine too. You don't have to be, you know, like Alisher is actually quite withdrawn. He's also a very like top tier player, but he's actually quite fun to play against.
Yeah, I enjoy playing against Alisher.
And I couldn't quite put my finger on like what it is about him. Like he's very serious and very into the game, but I have a great time. Like, you know, and in my game against him, one of my games against him, I was like talking about how my Riders of Rohan were all excited to throw throwing spears at Denethor, largely because I was excited for them to throw throwing spears at Denethor because there's a non-zero chance they actually kill him with throwing spears. It's like a pretty good chance. And I don't know, I just had fun. Like, this guy's going to ride up, he's going to have an opportunity to throw his throwing spears. You know, I don't know. Yeah, trying to tell that story a little bit, and not necessarily at the cost of your game, but I think that it is something to keep in mind. Is if you're always making all of those choices, you know, are you having a fun time?
And that's the thing, is that you can be winning or losing the game, but you can also pick parts that don't matter, and you're like, these 5 dudes are standing on top of this fountain. This is their fountain, like. Come at me, bro. And I've had games where it's like, I've lost, but you've got like 3 orcs fighting my 3 dudes on top of this like hill that I decided was the hill of me, and I want to roll out those fights. Like I will call it as it is, but like, can we roll out these fights? Because and I feel like if you bring that excitement around, like he's defending the doorway, he's like I gotta like whatever. If you bring that stuff to a game, 9 times out of 10, your opponent will also get excited about that specific part of it as well.
Yeah, and actually, he's someone who I don't think plays the game anymore. I know I've mentioned this before in the podcast. He played Easterlings, had a great Easterling army. Him and I had at that very first Nova that we played at had such a great game with like 2 of our archers fighting over this hill,
right?
Or this like archering position. Which, first of all, archering positions in Lord of the Rings generally don't matter anyway, because now your warriors are stuck in a stupid place when they need to be able to move. But also, like, it just didn't matter in the game. But we had a really great time fighting over that location.
Yeah, so I think the sort of takeaways from this and to sort of tie it into not just telling people what to do, what I think we are going to try and do as a podcast and as content creators for this game moving forwards is like, we talk about all these tournaments we go to. That's great. That's fine. We very rarely win one or even place. So we're not really a place to come to for particularly competitive advice. And that's fine. I'm fine with that. There was a moment in time after I think it was after my display board at the previous Nova, my Helm Hammerhand display board didn't win, and I was disappointed in that. And I was talking to Jake, and I was like, should I take this seriously? Should I like actually try and win these things? And he, very diplomatically as he does, was kind of like, I think that's a terrible idea, and you will have way less fun if you try and do that. I think you should try and have more fun. And he's like, whenever like Josh and I, his brother, whenever we play, we always have like side bets going on where it's like, well, if you don't charge this guy, gentleman's agreement that these two are going to fight it out, and like that, and that is, I was like, that is more fun. And especially as somebody who gets salty when losing, if I try and care more, it just ups that ante and makes it happen more. Yeah. But so anyway, we're not, as a long-winded way to say, we're not really the place to come for super competitive advice. We're happy to give anyone, as you can tell by how much I talk, our 2 cents about whether we think something's good, whether we think something's bad, whether it's fun, whether it's not fun. And we'll continue to talk about tournaments. But I think moving forwards, especially in the new edition, we are really going to try and focus on bringing a cool army, an army that we like have a story for, that this is a cool theme, and playing it in a way that like is entertaining for everyone. And that may mean we sort of change a little bit how we do our army reviews. Ben had suggested we sort of like come up with a bit like a narrative and sort of do a narrative recap of the game, and then we can talk. Yeah,
give me a first-person story of how Aragorn did his battle. That makes sense in the context of the battle you played, Sam. That'd be amazing.
Or the guy next to him is like,
the guy next to him, like that'd be even funnier.
Went nuts. It was really weird. We showed up over this hill, and there was a mirror army. There was just Aro and Lessar over there, like poof,
I just played a game where, actually the game was about my Keeper of the Dungeons not dying when he should have 3 times in a row, which was amazing. But really the game was about this one orc spearman who I put in charge of holding a flank, and I expected him to die, but then he lived for like 6 turns in a row, and he was the last orc on the board. And like, I could have told that battle as the saga of like, right. I gave him a name. He was something stupid. He might have even just been like Frank the Foolish.
Right.
It wasn't a particularly orky name. It was just a dumb name that I gave this orc because I expected him to fail. And then I got really invested in like this heroic orc when all the other orcs around him were dying, and he was just shielding against these Knights of Dale.
Yeah. So as a podcast, I think we're going to try and push that stuff. We've talked about doing some like video battle reports where we're going to come up with our own narratives and do stuff. So fingers crossed that actually happens and works. And not to say that like Ben isn't going to play some soup army and try and win an event, but we just may not include that on the podcast because everyone in their like mother does those kind of, has seen those kind of lists and knows how they tend to do or not. And maybe we'll have an episode where Ben's had this event that he's like, I actually really would like to try and win this one. It's got Smaug as a prize, and I'm really going for it. So in the next episode, maybe we like check in, Ben. How did you do? How did it end up? Was it, what was the deal? Okay, cool. But we're not going to go through all 6 battle reports he did.
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing, you and I haven't talked about this off air, so surprise. That I think we should do, Sam. Be the change you want to see in the world. Encourage the change in others. We did one event where we sponsored favorite theme, and we had some people actually make some really cool thematic choices for that. Yeah. So I think we should do that again.
Yeah.
We should come up with more cool prizes, and we should sponsor. We should reach out to some more tournament organizers and start sponsoring some favorite theme stuff with cool, sweet giveaways. Because encourage people. Be the cat. We'll be with some carrot. We'll whine about you. That'll be the stick. You and your stupid your soup list players. We're gonna whine and bitch about you. And for those who made the thematic choice and played some cool stuff, we'll try and reward that too, I think.
Yeah. That is a surprise, but I thoroughly agree. So if anyone is organizing a tournament and wants to have a Gondor Calls for Ale official favorite theme choice, feel free to reach out. And, even if it's not an event we're going to attend to, I'm sure through the many ways of the internet, we can get something cool over to you guys.
We can do a FaceTime viewing of armies on parade. That'd be hilarious. Or we could give the strict criteria to the event organizer.
Yeah. I more meant getting them a cool trophy or prize to give away, but we could also
mail. It's just shit through the mail. Anyone can do that.
Well, yeah. Anyway, I
just give it to England
and order something and having it delivered to them. Like, I'm not spending $75 to ship 3 dice to the UK. Whatever. Anyway, yeah. So I think that's a great idea and certainly something we would be up for. I think the other thing that I have certainly talked about a few times and you've been talking about is I think we should start trying to run events, like run the events you want to attend to. I mean, run the events you want to go to or attend, and have events with silly additional rules. Like, I've told a few people about this, and this is trademarked, by the way, so you can't steal it, is my pirate-themed idea of an event where everyone gets a crew of pirates, and each mission has a set of specific pirate-only objectives, and do things like you get an extra tournament point for wearing a big pirate hat, or whatever,
for having a bigger pirate hat than your opponent.
Yeah. Right. So stuff like that, or like Ben said, the beacons tournament, or 1,000 flaming brands in the wind tournament, where everyone who models their basic troops with a flaming brand, if you pay whatever the points cost for a flaming brand is and you model it on your troops, that troop gets to count as having a flaming brand. A really simple
frying pan and into the flaming brands.
A really simple one would be looks like special strikes are back on the menu, boys. You use the old special strike rules, but you always have to special strike.
Also, it must be WYSIWYG, obviously.
Oh, yeah, but everyone's got a sword or something.
Yeah.
So I think doing and like the the idea of minimize that they run in Australia is really cool. So I think trying to get some more of those like events that are different enough that you can't just be like, I just brought my competitive list and it was fun, And again, you set the hierarchy of like, here are some really cool prizes for this man, and we're not giving it to first place. You get the like janky PLA printed model that you're like, oh, maybe not that bad, but still. So there's my soapbox for the day, Ben. You didn't have to describe it to me. You brought me a box.
Yep, you stood on it and had a grand old ramble, and we did have a point, even though we rambled. So.
That is true, and hopefully it's food for thought. Hopefully nobody feels specifically called out. If you do, you probably deserve it. Double down. No, I mean I haven't had a single specific person in mind. It's except for complaining about Ben and his. We'll take an aside. At Nova, Ben played.
And did terribly with
Gondor and Rohan soup list, right? It was Theodred, Dernhelm.
No, that one didn't have Dernhelm. It was Theodred, Boromir, and Gandalf the White.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So just even less themed. Which we had a conversation with, like, if you're gonna play Soup, you should play a little bit better version of Soup. So
Yeah, right. You shouldn't suck.
But what he was going to play was he was going to play the Paths of the Druidan with a bunch of Loses and Rohan, which nobody ever plays, and would have been so much cooler. You could have made a little.
I would have had so much more fun with it. I wish I had done that.
So that's prime example. So there you go. Now, dear listeners, dear viewers, you know that Ben was almost the second coolest person in that room. Obviously, playing the Grey Company was. No,
Pukelman would have beaten out the Grey Company.
100%. You said that, and I was like, I kind of want to make Pukelman.
Right? Pukelman, yes.
Right.
Read it. It's in the book. It's canon.
It's true.
It's also probably going to Legacy.
Wasn't on the list.
It wasn't on the list, but I'm not. I wouldn't be shocked if the list wasn't comprehensive.
Yeah. Anyway, so hopefully that this has inspired both players and tournament organizers alike to do some really cool dumb stuff.
Yeah. No more boring 800-point veto tournaments. Fuck that shit.
Yes. Down.
None of that.
You know where the veto can go, Ben? Down to Goblin Town. That's what I say. Yes,
absolutely. Yeah. Goblin Town, another faction that probably could do with flaming brands thematically, but shouldn't have them because they would just...
Yeah, that would be pretty good.
80 goblins, all of them with flaming brands.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll see. I mean, I don't think it's going to be a particularly widespread war gear item. I think there may be a few other things that get it, which would be cool. Yeah. But oh damn, there's another cool leak that I just thought of that I really like.
Oh, bring it on, Sam. It leaks and potatoes and leaks again. Leek and potato soup.
Which was the change to heroic resolve seems really cool. You can now move and resolve, and you auto pass. Like, you can call a resolve if your hero gets charged. He still gives out a stand fast. Pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. So I think, Ben, that is it. Unless there's anything else you want to bring up.
No more leaks, no more potatoes from me, Sam.
And given that this will be out on the 29th? When is this out?
This coming Friday.
29th, yeah, the 29th. I was going to say the next episode we might have the new book to talk about, but that will be, I think, but a day away. So who's to say what the next episode will be about? Not us. We make it up as we go along.
We absolutely do.
So we hope you have enjoyed this episode, and
we certainly did.
I had a blast, and please consider liking the video if you are watching on YouTube, and subscribe to YouTube if you are or aren't watching, and consider checking out our Patreon, as it enables us to give away cool prizes for best theme. Until next time. Thank you for listening to Gondor Calls for Ale. We hope you have enjoyed this episode. We, at Gondor Calls for Ale, are officially sponsored by the Baron of Dice, the producer of premium wargaming dice. These beautifully hand-swirled resin dice have no micro bubbles and are therefore perfectly balanced. With over 3,000 variants and unique designs, nearly every tabletop gaming system is represented. So check out the description of this episode for a link and a discount code. Go buy yourself some new dice and let the good times roll. We at Gondor Calls for Ale are not associated with Games Workshop, New Line Cinema, or the Tolkien Estate. We hope we have not misrepresented or offended anyone. These recordings are strictly recollections of games we've played and are not commentaries on the character or competence of our opponents. They are intended purely for entertainment, and we hope they will be taken as such. You can find us on Patreon, see the link in the description. Supporting Gondor Calls for Ale there helps us continue to produce these episodes. You can find us on Instagram at Gondor_calls_for_ale. Feel free to send us a message there. Or on Facebook as Gondor Calls for Ale, another great place to send us a message. or you can send us an email at gondorcallsforale@gmail.com. As Boromir, captain of the White Tower, once said, remember today, listener, today this episode was good.